this is Vicki Gervicus at the Greater Gainesville Chamber of Commerce, and I am the Director of Public Policy, and I'm delighted to be joined today by July Thomas, one of our candidates for mayor for the Gainesville City Commission. And she's going to tell us a little bit about herself and why she decided to jump into this race. July, happy to see you today.
It's good to see you too. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is July Thomas. I've been a Gainesville resident for about 10 years. I moved up here for school and worked in the community. I am a writer primarily. My day job until very recently has been working as a computational astrophysicist at the university, researching supermassive black holes. I've also done a lot of research into local Gainesville history. A large part of the reason that I sort of got into that was just walking around Gainesville and seeing structures that had been here for a very long time, seeing streets that had been laid, over a century ago, and just getting sort of curious about the people that built those things and the way that a building can be adapted throughout its lifetime. Means that you have architecture that can tell a story, which is just really compelling. So I have done work within the community, especially the queer community downtown, sort of the people who fell through the cracks educationally here. And it was sort of that community that I'm stepping up for. I believe that sort of fundamentally, the parable that I always use is that government is just about, we all live on a road, the road needs to be paved. No one is going to pave the road on their own. So one guy has to go around and get all the money and hire the paver. And it's pretty ironic to use that parable, I think, in Gainesville, where we have so many potholes. But what I've found the last few years is that it's become much more difficult to actually get the little things done. I'm talking to people who are in the community who need to get something done with the government's assistance, and government has ground to a halt. And it's sort of become a place for ideologues to try and score some points or get a nice picture for a portfolio or something. And it's frustrating for the people that are working inside of City Hall. So fundamentally, the thing that I can do here is bring my skills and my training into City Hall, but also to address sort of the cultural dysfunction that's been going on in there. It's time to sort of change up the way that we address our community and the way that we tie our vast human resources that we have in the city into the functioning of government.
Very good. Okay, well, let's jump into the questions now. And you've kind of touched on them a little bit, so they shouldn't be too far out there. What do you perceive are the three most important concerns facing Gainesville today?
So the first one that I usually start with is the functioning within the government. And that's something that it's a weird thing to make a campaign promise about, because it's a cultural shift isn't something that you'll notice until 5 or 10 or whatever, however many years down the road. But that is something that I've already started to work on. I've already begun building relationships with people who work inside of City Hall and talked about certain projects that I could help them on, changing the way that currently we have a city commission that is basically just siloed off from all of the full-time employees inside of the government. And so what happens is a city commission will vote and they need somebody to run this report or that report or take on this work. And they're giving that work to somebody who already works 40 hours a week. And then those commissioners, because they are technically part-time, finish their meeting, and they have way too many hours, like 30 hours of meetings a week now. They finish their meetings and they go home, and they're not engaging with the people who are working full-time and who they're shoveling work onto. And it just creates a really toxic work environment. So the one thing that I will hit the ground running from the very beginning is ensuring that I'm maintaining those relationships with the full-time workers. I understand what they're working on, and I also understand the things that they want to work on, because a lot of them have really good ideas and they're having trouble even getting approval from the commissioners to pursue the things they want to pursue. And this sort of ties into the way that the community has been shut out. It wasn't always that way. I mean, even 10 years ago, the community was very actively involved in a lot of decision-making processes. Now, the only extent to which the commission really addresses the community is to say that the community needs to be re-educated about some issue. And sure, there are instances where maybe a commissioner knows a lot about some things. There are also instances where commissioners don't know a lot, and they still view themselves as experts because they hold some sort of power, and they don't engage with the people in the community who have time and knowledge and expertise. So plugging them in with the people who are working full time, I think you start to create a much more communal flow to the whole thing. I think we have a weak mayor system, and we have somebody who's currently trying to serve as a strong mayor within the weak mayor system. and it doesn't work. So we're going to go back to the weak mayor system, which means a mayor who is primarily concerned with the duties of running the meetings, serving as a figurehead, and then, with what time I do have, a little bit of data science and a little bit of human relations as well. Uh, so that's point one. I'm not looking at a timer either. The other
Okay.
things are development is a huge one, and the way that developers via the paid consultants in town just sort of run through all the planning process. And it doesn't need to be that way. Those changes were largely, I believe it was in 2017, the Anthony Lyons sort of restructuring of the way that approval was going to be done in the city. So bringing the community in, viewing this city as a city of neighborhoods, and each neighborhood has its own individual unique characteristic that the people who live there want to be a part of, right? It makes sense to allow them to have some input on the other things that are going to go in. And once you bring them in, then you create a better functioning unit within the neighborhood. And again, the whole city starts to operate sort of together. And yeah, so that's sort of the first
Okay.
2 points.
Okay. All right. Well, and you'll have another opportunity to throw in some more thoughts on that. And you did kind of touch on my next question, which is what is the role of the mayor of Gainesville?
Yeah, yeah. So just to emphasize that,
Yeah.
you're leading the meetings, and you are going to ceremonies, you're cutting ribbons, and you're doing things like that. I also sort of view it as there's a little bit of a figurehead aspect to it. If anyone is gonna, if a random person, maybe they're thinking of moving here, maybe they live here, if they're gonna know one person in a local city government, it's going to be the mayor. And there is definitely a shift that I would bring in that sense when people are going to look me up and say, wow, okay, there's a non-binary transgender mayor with long hair who works in the bars downtown and writes books and likes music and stuff like that. It paints a different picture, and maybe it's not the picture that everybody wants sort of projected out into the world about Gainesville, but that is something that I was surprised to find here. The community that that I have been home in for the last 10 years, I didn't know existed until I really stumbled upon it. And I think it would be a cool opportunity to sort of show, people around the state at the very least, they're like, hey, Gainesville a little different
Mhm.
in a good way.
Absolutely. All right. And now this kind of piggybacks off of question one, which is what would be your top priorities and projects if you were to win?
Yeah. So yeah, I guess I'll just sort of keep building on that. And I'll address that third point as well. So the third point, which is probably should be the first since I'm talking to the chamber here, is about local business and local industry and supporting the industries that do well. We had a big Hail Mary project with Innovation Square and Innovation Hub, where a lot of city funds were poured into it and somehow we didn't even end up owning any of the buildings or land that came out of that, but that's beside the point. That's gone now. But what we've seen within Innovation Square is that we've had companies which essentially have served one lease cycle, and then the office space wasn't working for them, and so almost all of the largest companies have moved out. The most recent one, I guess, was Feather, who had moved into the Sharp Spring building. They actually scaled down and moved into the Wells Fargo building because they realized that a more permanent sort of hybrid work from home model is the way to go going forward. That's going to be the case, I think, with a lot of companies, because it's such a cheap way. If you're trying to recruit employees, it's such a cheap way to give somebody something they want, right? You don't have to pay them anymore. You literally just say, hey, you get to work from home sometimes. So inevitably that's where we're going to end up. But anyway, so the issue I think with Innovation Square is that we didn't look at the industries that were doing well. There are industries within town that do well. Everybody knows education, obviously. And our UF Health and the hospital and the healthcare industries are also doing very well. But actually, it's our hospitality industry that if you look at the median size of a hospitality industry and you adjust it for our population, our hospitality industry is larger in comparison to the median than even the healthcare industry is. And the hospitality industry largely just exists, despite everything that goes on in the city. There really hasn't been any support there. And the directions that you can take that, well, I think one thing that you can do is look at these uh, businesses that have run as businesses that maybe have expanded into a couple different places, and start looking at ways to turn those from businesses where they are primarily profit motivated into more of an institution, where now what they're focused on is taking these employees who have been working in those places for years and figuring out how to spin them up and out into something new, into some new venture, providing opportunities for people to take a chance in an incubator, whether that's a farmer's market building that's like a hybrid with kitchens and things like that, or encouraging more space for food trucks and things like that. Just providing these sort of opportunities, because I have all of these friends who train in these kitchens, they become expert chefs, and then they hit a wall. And I hear over and over, I just have to leave. And whenever I hear that term, I have to leave, it's just, that's always bugged me. Like, I don't think you should have to leave. By all means, leave. But if you love this place enough that you spent your 20s here and now you're getting into your 30s and you're just struggling to put down roots, I think we could do more to figure out how to help those people put down roots. And of course, that all ties into housing and low stakes and things like that. But those are the things that I think about quite a bit.
Okay, very good. And again, I think you touched on my next question as well, which is there's been significant turmoil both within the commission and within city staff. How do you think that's best addressed?
So some of that is just going to be addressed by the fact that this is a change election. A majority of the commission is changing over. And Dr. Chestnut is still only a few months into her term as well. So she's still kind of new there. And basically the entire thrust of the commission right now, it seems, is pointed at the changes to the zoning code. So there's not, I don't know, will they get that done? Will they not? I don't know. But that sort of is at least occupying them enough that hopefully the people that are still there, I think, do still want to be there. It's a shame to talk to people and have them say, like, I love this job. I've been here for 20 years. I was motivated to come to work. Now I'm just checking off dates on a calendar until I hit whatever, retirement, or whenever I can leave, or whenever my contract is up. And again, some of those people will leave. I think, again, approaching those people not as your subservience, but approaching them as coworkers, and recognizing that, everyone on the commission has strengths and weaknesses. So what is the point of having a government with more than one person? Is so that you can acknowledge your weaknesses and you can bring up people. One person cannot know everything. I've tried my best. I'm pretty confident at this point. One single person can't know everything. But what I can do is know other people who do know more than me about certain things. And tapping into the people who are already in the government. They've already signed up to work for the government. They already believe in the mission of the government. Finding out what their strengths are and supporting them, and finding out how we as commissioners can pitch in on their projects and actually help them on the day-to-day. Not micromanaging, but it's actually something different, which is like checking up on them and ensuring that they have the resources that they need to complete their projects and that they're not overloaded and those types of things. I think we can make City Hall a great place to work. And then you start to, again, attract people to come here in a different way than building a bunch of office buildings and giving a break on a lease cycle like they did in Innovation Square. Now you actually create a culture where, hey, there's cool things going on. There's things popping up all the time. There's startups in different industries. You can get into the government and get involved, and you can try out these, new sort of forward-looking projects. That's the stuff that I am really hopeful to see take off during whatever time I happen to serve as mayor.
Okay, very good. All right, and here's one of these follow-up questions, kind of broad, open-ended things that people really love, but it is, and it's our final question. Why should members of the business community vote for you?
Yeah, well, you can ask them. It's not a surprise to me. The reason why it's a surprise to me when I get support from a business owner is because I have been so nosy and so in everyone's business for so many years, and I haven't done everything right. We've had fights, we've had to have it out, this over little things, over big things, over, labor, over a lot of trans and gender stuff around downtown over the years, as I'm sure you can imagine. And it's surprising to me that those people despite all that, do support me. I think when I have conversations with them, I think the reason why is because they know that fundamentally, if nothing else, understand where Gainesville came from and what it is today, and I can see what it can be in the future. And I think that that is something that I am hearing from different folks in business. My vision doesn't have to dictate the way it all goes, but I do have a vested interest in allowing Gainesville to develop into something that is unique and special, and that is Gainesville, and that takes all the best aspects and the reasons why we're all here, right? Some people it's for the university, but for me, I didn't stay because of the university. I stayed because there was something cool here that wasn't happening anywhere else. And getting your sort of finger on that pulse and thinking about how to support that and allow that to grow. I think that that is why there are business owners who are excited about me running, and they say it's so cool to see one of us doing it. It's like, well, I'm not really one of you, other than that I hang out and we go to the same shows and stuff. So that's sort of pitched to the business community. Yeah.
Very good. Okay, so now here is your opportunity. Anything that we didn't talk about up to now, if there was anything you wanted to expand on, this is your last bit to close us out and bring us home.
Cool. So what I'm going to give here is just a series of questions that I want everyone to start thinking about. I don't have, immediate answers, but these are the things that I've just been thinking about, and I'd love to get input. So if you're going to come up to me and chat with me at some point, talk to me about one of these things if you're looking to break the ice. So what I've been thinking about a lot is the mode of development that has been pursued over especially the last 5 years, which is to take a city block, evict all the businesses, raise a city block to the ground, navigate permitting, whatever, and then build this tower in its place, right? And then you have the commercial space on the ground floor, which isn't built out. And if it is built out, it's not suited to the right purpose, so it just sits vacant. Target couldn't even stay open in the standard, right? Clearly, that model doesn't work. The idea was that you would build up these areas where you had commercial activity, and instead, they've destroyed everywhere where they've tried to do that. And that's sort of what we're seeing in Midtown now. Now these high-rises are having difficulty renting out their spaces because there's nothing to do. So we just have this like big vertical suburb that's been built up in Midtown. So the thing that I want other people to sort of start thinking about and approaching about is, how do we do something that still attempts to address that same idea, which is we have commercial activity, right? This is a cool neighborhood. I think I live downtown. I work downtown. I spend a lot of my time down there. How do we put housing or more commercial space or whatever in those areas without disrupting the existing businesses, the existing culture? I've been thinking a lot about adaptive reuse. I've been thinking about places where I was just sort of clicking around on Google Maps Street View, as I do a few times a week, just cruising around downtown and looking at all these spaces that 50 years ago were apartments that maybe now are offices, or maybe they're empty, and thinking about, well, what sort of creative things could we do there? Could that be an art studio? Could that be, could some of them be turned into offices, different types of offices? Could we put apartments in there? I would love nothing more than to live in an apartment right on Main Street, right above some loud business where I have to listen to music until 2 a.m. every night. I would love that lifestyle. It's not for everyone. But I think a lot of people who really, really want density, what they're really talking about is they want to live where the action is. And that's not everybody. But maybe if we can find a way to get those few people, however many it happens to be, and give them opportunities where they can live in density. Here, what we're doing instead is supporting this area that already exists and allowing it to grow, rather than trying to just, wipe out the block and put up something different, and changing the entire fabric of the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that's a good question to have people be thinking about, for sure. All right. Well, that is fantastic. And it's been a pleasure. Let me get back into, so I can actually see you again more clearly. It's been a pleasure talking to you today. And what I wanted to make sure we emphasize as the Greater Gainesville Chamber is that we want everyone to make sure their voice is heard. So please do register to vote, and make sure you have Tuesday, August 23rd on your calendar as the primary. July, thank you so much for joining us, and we will look forward to seeing you out on the campaign trail until
Great, yeah. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you.